YouTube, it's Kat coming back with another video, my grief series. This is going to be steps 6 and 7, which I'm going to be talking about learning about adoption trauma and anger. And these were two big ones for me as well. The anger one was a big one. But I'm glad I'm past it. So let me start with my intro as usual, and then I'm going to recap a little bit, and then we're going to get started with everything. So my name is Kat Davald. I am a 47-year-old birth mom, and I'm in reunion for the past 3.5 years now with my 31-year-old daughter. So a little recap is I started the grief series, and I basically made a rundown of the difference between adoption relinquishment grief and adoption reunion grief. And adoption relinquishment grief is basically when you first relinquish your child and the feelings that you go through with that, which include denial, anger, daydreaming, depression, and finally acceptance. With reunion, it's been totally different, and these are the steps that I personally have been going through since finding my daughter till today. So basically there's been 10 steps so far, and I'm just going to read them real quick, and then once we get to where we are, I'm going to stop, and I'm not going to go further than that. So it basically started with happy initial reunion grief. This was where we first met each other. Not even met each other, just contacted each other. Like I found her on Ancestry. We matched DNA and we started emailing. That was the happy initial reunion grief, and that was just basically like bawling my eyes out because I found my daughter. Then it was reliving relinquishment and memory recognition and starting to remember all the things that I had suppressed for so many years because it was traumatizing. After that, I started to go through the loss of not raising her and the loss of not knowing her to knowing her now. So basically, knowing her as an infant and then knowing her as a 28-year-old and not knowing her as an in-between. Seeing pictures of her is one thing, but knowing her as a child and having memories or as a teenager or whatever, that was different. And that was a part of the grieving process that I went through as well. Then I came to what ifs and what could have beens, and that was difficult. And I discussed this yesterday, but I still do it. I still do what ifs and what could have beens. After that is learning about the past and the BSC and Georgia Tan and orphan trains and all that. I went over that yesterday. Today we are going to go a little bit into learning about adoption trauma and anger. Those are the two that are next up in the grief series, and they kind of go together, because once I started to learn about adoption trauma, then the grief started to the anger started to happen, because then I started thinking about all the coercion and the lies and the how you look to society and all that stuff. So that's where we're going to start right now, and I'm just going to jump right in. When I started to learn about the past, learning about adoption trauma kind of went hand in hand, because I started to learn and read things that, you know, both issues would come up, and a lot of stories talk about the trauma and everything like that. So it's a huge topic, and it really needs its own series of videos adoption trauma does. And I plan on making those, but those are going to take a little bit more time and research for me to go through and really thoroughly put together some good videos, because I don't want to skip anything. Adoption trauma, for birth moms is different than for adoptees. And I really want to cover a lot fully. So, learning about adoption trauma both kind of broke me and started me on a path to healing at the same time. And I didn't even realize it. I started reading The Primal Wound. And this book was probably the most enlightening book that I had ever read before. I was desperate to find out what not to do to drive my daughter away in reunion. So the Primal Wound was a big help, because it told me all about the potential trauma that she could be facing. And it also explained some of mine as well, but it was more of a focus on adoptees. So I was able to say, okay, I shouldn't do this, and this, because it might affect her, like one of the things, let's just say, you don't want to be all weepy and run to her and hug and cry on her shoulder and you're back and, mommy's here and stuff. Not that I was going to do that anyways, but that's something that you want to generally avoid unless you know for a fact that the adoptee wants it, because then that could be like, well, wait, you're not my mom, and that would have just been weird. And me and her, we had discussions and everything, about how, yeah, like, you're not my mom. And I was like, okay, I don't feel like your mom. So, but, and then there's always, every once in a while, I'll throw it out to her that if things ever change, let's have a discussion, so she knows that, things are open. Things can change if she wants them to. So, basically, I let her lead. So learning about adoption trauma was cathartic as well and healing. It helped me go down a road, like, now I know how she could potentially feel. It really opened my eyes to her potential trauma. And I say potential because, number one, I'm not telling you her story. That's her story to tell. Number two is that she doesn't necessarily have all the trauma that's described in the book. So, it's potential. You want to be able to look and see and gauge for yourself. Like, it'll give me a good, like, if she says something one day that's like out of character for her, but I can piece it to a part in the book, I can be like, oh, okay, she's being bitchy like this because of such and such. So, I can, kind of gauge her trauma. Not that I'm a therapist or anything, but I like to be aware. I mean, how? She could be just saying something bitchy because she's on her period or whatever, but still, I can, calm myself down and not get emotional over her reactions, I guess we'll say. Anyways. So, yeah, it was very helpful in allowing me to set boundaries for myself so that I don't overwhelm her and I don't scare her away. That was my biggest thing when we first entered reunion, was like, how do I do this? And I don't understand, I don't know why. I was very much like that. Like, usually I don't care. I don't care, and I just speak my mind. I guess it's because it's my daughter, you know, and I really didn't want to mess anything up. Yeah, my biggest fear was being too much too soon. And she would just be like, forget this, and cease communication. Like, I did not want that to happen at all. So, yeah, I really highly recommend that anyone entering a relationship with an adoptee, whether it be a reunion or just a regular relationship, adoptive parents, even adoptees, hell, read the book Primal Wound. It is very, very good, and it's enlightening, to be able to put some of these things into perspective. As I read through it, I would recall conversations of things that had happened and could identify areas that I would need to tread lightly, or maybe not even at all, and just be like, okay, I'm gonna leave that alone. I know now when to back off, or maybe, you know, like, give some options. And it also allows me to make my intentions clear so that she doesn't have to worry about what I may be thinking. So I don't want her to be clueless about me. Like, I spread it all on the table for her. Here you go. These are my cards. These are my deck. You know, take a look at them. But you can remain a secret. Like, I don't care. That's fine with me. Like, if she needs to be conservative, that's fine with me. Moving on from there, it's a known fact that all adoptees have trauma. It's been well researched, and a lot of people deny it. And no, either adoptees are saying, no, I don't have trauma, I'm fine. Or adoptive parents say, no, my child is fine, they're fine. Or birth mothers say it, no, they're fine, they're thriving, whatever. No, all adoptees have trauma. The separation of mother and baby from birth puts a fight or flight instinct into them. Okay? Basically, what ends up happening is a baby exchanges cells, through the blood system when they're in utero. So they know their mother's sound, they know their mother's smell, they know their mother's, you know, heartbeat, and they exchange cells, so they have this bond that has gone on with their mother for 9 months. And when you give a child up for adoption and that mother is no longer around, but you put another mother in its place, the child shuts down. They either cry all the time, and, you know, they basically are scared, and they just cry consistently, or they don't cry at all. And they just kind of lay there, and they're complacent and very quiet, and everything like that. So that is known to happen. It's been well documented, and, you know, some people will say, oh, well, no, some people will say, well, no, you know, there's been people that have debunked that, and blah, 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 whatever. I don't believe that. From what I've read, from all the research papers that I've read, and all the scientific research and the studies and everything, there's trauma when you separate a child and its mother. It even goes so far as, you know, when a baby has to go into the NICU, and they don't have that contact with the mother. That's also, those babies go through trauma as well, because they are separated from that mother that they know. So moving on, certain behaviors are trauma responses, and once you know them, they are easy to spot. So, as a birth mom, I completely hid my PTSD. I didn't realize I had PTSD. Now I do, and I can identify it because now I know the signs of it. Once I reached reunion, that's when I started to realize, and when I was doing all this research, that's when I started to realize that I had PTSD as well. One huge trauma response for me was people pleasing. I would just, if somebody needed something, I would go ahead and do it. It doesn't matter what my needs were, anything. They were first. I, made sure that people, got what they needed before I did. Going out of my way to make others happy at my own expense was a big thing that I did my whole entire life. I do not anymore. I had no boundaries, and I let myself be walked on for years. Um, Kind of half-heartedly realizing it, but really not. Looking back now, I totally see every instance of where I was totally walked all over. From family to friends to boyfriends, I was a narcissist dream. I really was. It wasn't fun to finally realize that I was this way, but it was healing and, and immensely powerful to finally like stand up and be like, no, you can't talk to me like that anymore. One of the biggest things I did is I cut my sister out of my life. She's been toxic my whole entire life from the day I was born, and I finally got rid of her. I didn't let my mother tell me otherwise, because my mother would always be like, well, that's your only sister, or, that's it's family. I'm like, it doesn't matter. She was a horrible person to me my whole entire life. That's a whole nother video. But still, she had to go. I wasn't having it anymore. Joining the triad groups that I'm in was also very helpful in learning about adoptee trauma and birth mom trauma too, but you kind of know birth mom trauma at this point. Adoptee trauma is what I really wanted to focus on because I wasn't the adoptee and I didn't know. So a triad group is where it's all members of the triad, so the adoptee, the adoptive parents, and the birth parents, and we're all in a group and we all discuss. They can be a little bit harsh because adoptees in these groups really are very open, and they do a lot of emotional work, and they tell people how it is. They have come out of the fog. That is an adoptee term of they realize that they have this trauma, basically, and they don't see adoption as rainbows and lollipops. They may very well have great parents, love their parents, but they also have adoption trauma, and they are willing to share and educate. But if you are lollipops and rainbows and puppies in these groups and, deny this type of trauma and stuff, they will get on you. So they can be harsh. So if you don't want to engage, don't engage, but listen, sit and read and listen to how they talk and listen to the things that they say and listen to their pain and listen to them. There's blogs upon blogs and influencers, and I'll link a bunch of below so that you can look them up. Really seems like great people. I follow a lot of adoptees so that I can learn from them and basically keep my bearings of, not being in this, like la-di-da type of state, like I know everything. I want to always stay grounded and for my daughter's sake, so that I don't become some wishy-washy type of person. And I understand why they get snippy and why they really shut people down. First of all, they put forth an immense amount of emotional work to try to teach people, and they're continually repeating themselves and going over their stories over and over and over again to try to help people understand the ramifications of adoption. They do sometimes call adoptive parents and birth parents not so nice names, like I would be called a relinquisher, sometimes just a womb, which I understand. I understand from their point of view. They didn't get a choice. Adoptees don't get a choice in this matter, and I'm okay with it. Like I don't take any offense to it because that's their story and they're allowed to feel however they'd like to feel. Um, I get frustrated too. So that's basically where I you know went with learning about adoption trauma, and I'm still learning and I'm still listening. I have learned a great deal of things from adoptees and from books, mainly The Primal Wound. There's another book, Journey of the Adopted Self, that is very good too. And it is just something that you have to keep listening to adoptees about. But after this, what had happened to me is I began to get angry. Um, because I got angry because I was forced to create this trauma for my daughter and myself. Um, Part of that was my anger. The other part was me letting it happen and not standing up for myself. So as I started to learn about what I had potentially done to my daughter by not standing up to my parents, to the school, to the agency, to the hospital, to society as a whole, I began to get really angry. I got angry at myself for being a coward and not saying anything, not standing up and saying I want to keep my daughter, for allowing myself to be pushed around. I started to get angry at myself for not trying to seek social services so that I could keep her, and just letting it all happen, letting the adults make decisions for me. I started to get really angry at myself. Um, I got really angry at myself for not demanding an open adoption, and remaining in her life. I got, not that it would have been able to be enforced, but maybe these people would have let me, even if it was once a year or something. I just, if I could see her, take her out for lunch, God, like anything. Like I used to think about that all the time. Like if I could only like meet her and take her, and even now I think, oh, that would have been so great. Like if she was like 13 and then she has her sisters, they're 4 years younger than her, so they would have been like 9. Like maybe, the parents would have let me take them all out for lunch or something, and we could have all, I think about that stuff all the time now. Like I hate it. I hate it. I wish things were different. And the fact that, we live so close to each other. We've never lived far. Like, why couldn't it have been open? It's just so sad. It's so sad that I lost 28 years with my daughter. So I started to get angry for not forcing the agency to give me an opportunity to meet these people that I was supposed to be giving my daughter to. Like, I literally gave my daughter to strangers. I didn't know them. I didn't even meet them. I didn't get a chance to. I haven't even told you my story yet. My whole, like, everything. And I'm going to have to record that one day. But that's a lot of emotional work, so I've been kind of putting it off. I was angry at my parents for being so selfish and only thinking of themselves and what they wanted. They wanted to keep a secret. They wanted to remain, the people that, they were known in the community. Not that we were any high and mighty people, but, oh God, the shame. What have I done? How are they going to look? Not me. Nothing mattered to me, or that this is your grandchild or anything. That, how are they going to look to other people? This is what they were concerned about. I was angry at the agency for taking my daughter from me because someone else had the big bucks and I just had the commodity that they wanted. They wanted the money and I had the baby. And that's it. And that's all I was to them. I was a womb to them. That's it. I was angry at my high school for kicking me out of school and for making me feel shameful. And then in my adoption groups, I began to get mad at all these birth moms who were just happy with their adoption. Oh, they were great. This is great. Great. I'm having a great adoption. Adoption is wonderful. Their 3-month-old or their 3-year-old was thriving. And then one day, boom, after we're saying everything, then one day, oh, the APs closed the door. They won't respond to me. They won't let me see my child. They won't let me talk to my child. And now I'm broken. I should have listened to you. And I would become angry. Like, why don't you listen? And then angry and expectant moms who were like, no, this is great. These APs wouldn't do this to me. The adoptive parents are awesome. They call me family and everything. And then once they get a hand on your baby, they close the door. Just today, in one of my groups, a girl said this. She was so upset. The poor thing, these adoptive parents said to her, treated her like family, told her that she was family and they'll never close the door. Once she gave birth and once they got their hands on her baby, they won't let her talk to them. They stopped responding like nothing. Like nothing. Cold-hearted people. And this is what people do. You have no idea. See, now I'm getting angry again. You have no idea the websites. People are making websites. Choose me to adopt your baby. And we're great parents and blah, blah, blah. There's all kinds of adoption websites and, we'll help you build a really great adoption website so that you get chosen. It's disgusting. And then I began to get angry when these young girls wouldn't listen to me and other women who had 30, 40, 50 years of experience in adoption, who were in reunion and saw, how things were after so many years, and listened, were in these triad groups and listened to these adoptees and everything. They didn't want to hear it. They just want to hear the rainbows and puppies. They drank the Kool-Aid, and they don't want to hear it. And then something happens and then they're crying and with their tail between their legs and they know that we were right. Honestly, no one really cares about the majority of us. They don't. We are baby makers. That's it. We are a vessel for you to get what you want. And it's sad. It's sad. And nobody takes into consideration. And honestly, there really should be laws in place, and especially in this country, that make open adoptions legally enforceable. Adoptive parents should not be able to close doors like that. For what reason? I was also angry at these girls who saw that, adoption is great and blah, blah, blah. And I was called bitter and angry and negative and toxic. This is what I was told. That made me angry. Like, how dare you? I'm 31 years into this. I've been through all the emotions. I've been where, I get it. I get where you're at. I get it. Because I thought that way too. I thought that way too. I was like, yeah, she has so much more than I could have ever given her. Bull. Okay? No, I could have probably given her that. Maybe it would have taken a couple years. She wouldn't have had, 10 million things under the Christmas tree on year one, but she wouldn't have known any difference anyways. So I was mad that they were calling me that. That made me angry. And then they would all find out that I was right. And they would, come back and say they were sorry and blah, blah, blah. Even though I was just trying to save them the pain and the misery. I would sit in Facebook groups for hours on end arguing with these girls and trying to make them see and trying to help expectant mothers to not give up their children for adoption and fighting and arguing and trying to talk people out of giving their children up for adoption. Trying to make them see what it really was. But in the end, all it really did was fuel more anger for me. And eventually, I realized I was so consumed in this, and I had to take a step back. I was just angry all the time, and it was starting to affect my everyday life. So I started to take a step back from it and not respond so much anymore and leave the birth mom groups a little bit more alone. Now, I state my claim. I do make a couple posts, like if I see like a meme or something like, oh, this really hits home or something, I'll post that. I agree with others. I'll make simple statements. I console the broken. I give reunion advice. I hit some like buttons and some hearts and some care buttons and stuff, but I don't get involved like I did before. Mainly one of the things that I say to expectant mothers looking for information is adoption is a permanent solution to a temporary situation, and that's where I leave it. I don't try to argue with people anymore because number one, it's too much emotional work. Number two, it makes me too angry, and I don't want to be angry anymore. I've been angry my whole entire damn life, and I don't want to be anymore. I just want to be happy, and I want to heal that part of me. And for the most part, I pretty much have almost gotten there. It's really unhealthy, and I've been angry for so long, so I just don't want to do it anymore. Even like the other day, you saw my video with the lady who told me I should be grieving my daughter as if she were dead. I exchanged some words with her. I was light about it. I wasn't as harsh as I used to be. But I was stern. But then once I realized that she was just, keeping going and she was fueling and everything like this, I just said, you know what, I'm going to agree to disagree. Because I can't. I'm not going to put emotional energy into somebody that thinks like that and damage my inner peace, because I really need, this part of my life, I need a lot of inner peace. So I bow out a lot now, and a lot quicker too. Letting go of this anger led me more towards understanding and acceptance, which is what I'm going to be talking about in the next video next week. That is understanding, acceptance, and then healing and moving forward. Those are going to be the last video that I have in this series. And then, it'll basically be done. But for right now, that's all I have for you, YouTube. So don't forget to like and subscribe. Leave me any comments below. And I will talk to you soon, okay? Thanks, YouTube. Have a great night. Bye-bye.